Well, good morning, everyone. I'm here with Kyle Stackhouse, age 10, and his dad, Jim. And we're going to talk about a few questions that Kyle has for me as the Ottawa Senator founder. My name is Bruce Firestone. And Kyle, you have a school project, and this is part of it. So why don't you ask me a question? I'll see if I can answer it.
All right. So the first question, why do you think Ottawa was a good fit for the NHL?
Why the Ottawa Senators were a good fit for the NHL?
Well, this is a long time ago, Kyle. It was in 1987, so long before you were born, when I was playing hockey with two of my employees, Randy Sexton and Cyril Leader. And we used to play pickup hockey. Do you like to play hockey?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too. Although I don't play very much anymore, I have to admit. But I certainly enjoyed it, although I wasn't very good. Randy and Cyril were both much better players than I was. So after we had played a game and the dressing room had cleared out, I said, Randy, Cyril, hang back a little bit. I have an idea. And they said, okay, what idea? And I said, I think the NHL is going to expand again, because the NHL every once in a while goes through an expansion process. And and so I said, I think the NHL is going to expand again. And they said, oh, that's interesting, but not really thinking much about it. Then I said, I think Ottawa is getting to the point where it's big enough. Ottawa and Gatineau, our sister city in Quebec, the area is getting big enough to support an NHL team. We're not as big as some American cities, but we're getting bigger. And everybody in Ottawa and Gatineau seems to love NHL hockey. So even though we might be a bit smaller market than, say, some of the American cities out there, in most American cities, Kyle, they have Major League Baseball to watch, and they have NBA basketball to watch, and of course they have National Football League football. Ottawa really didn't have that. So I said, I think we have enough dedicated hockey fans in Ottawa that Ottawa could support a team. And so they said, well, that's interesting. Okay, good. And then I said to them, I think we should be the bidder, that the company that I owned at that time, Terrace Investments Limited, should in fact be the bidder. And Randy Sexton, who's an MBA, Master of Business Administration from Clarkson University in the United States, he immediately gets up and goes, yeah, let's do it. But Cyril Leader, who later became the president of the Ottawa Senators, and he is a chartered accountant, was much more cautious. He said, yeah, how much is it going to cost, and how are we going to pay for it?
Cool. All right, you got another question? Okay. How long did it take to complete the deal?
How long it took to complete the deal?
So we started in 1987, and we didn't actually get the hockey team on the ice until October of 1992. So the Ottawa Senators, you may know this, did play in the National Hockey League a long time ago, back in the 1920s and 1930s, even into the 1917s, I think, into the teens. And the Ottawa Senators existed for many years and had won 9 Stanley Cups. But in 1933, there was a really tough recession. In fact, it was called the Great Depression, which meant a lot of people lost their jobs, like kind of what we're going through now with COVID-19. And so in 1933, the Ottawa Senators were no longer able to continue to play in Ottawa. It was just too difficult. And they moved to St. Louis, where they played for a year. And then after a year, they failed there too. So we started to try and get the Ottawa Senators back as an expansion team. Started the idea and the program in 1987, and they didn't play their first game until about 5 years later in 1992. So it took a long time. But if you think about it, if you're an NHL hockey fan, it really took from 1933 until 1992, which, if you are counting, is almost 60 years.
Wow, very long time. All right, and your last question, was there any other location considered for the rink?
Was there any location they should put the rink?
Yeah, so I think we had 5 or 6, sites that we had looked at. One was in the east end of Ottawa. Do you know Orleans? Have you ever been to Orleans?
Yeah.
Where do you live, Kyle? Which suburb do you live in?
Where do you live? Tell me where you live. No, you. It's your project.
Grand Canary.
Okay, not far from me. So, we looked in Orleans, which is in the east end of Ottawa. We looked on the south end of Ottawa, where there was a big site that was available. We looked at Lansdowne Park, where the Ottawa Red Blacks play today. And we looked at a site in Quebec, in Gatineau, which was then called Hull, where there is the Casino de Lac Limy today, but back then it didn't exist. And we looked at Le Breton Flats, which is right downtown. And we also looked in Kanata, where the Canadian Tire Center actually is. And one of the sites, I think my favorite was Le Breton Flats, which was just a big empty field, and still to this day is probably just a big empty field, mostly. And I went to see the chair of the National Capital Commission, which owns the site and manages that property. Excuse me. And her name was Jean Piggott. She was a wonderful woman. And I said to her, do you think we could build the Canadian Tire Center? Back then we called it the Palladium at Le Breton Flats downtown. And she said to me, Bruce, do you want the private answer or the public answer? And I said, Mrs. Piggott, are they different? And she said, yes, they are. So what's the public answer? And the public answer, she said, is we don't like to say no to Canadians. So what we'll do is we'll say, we'll study it. And Bruce, we'll study it until one of two things happens. Either you give up and go away or you die, whichever comes first. We don't care. I said, wow, okay. So what's the private answer, Jean? She said, no. And the reason for that is that Jean Piggott, and the NCC at that time had a 150-year plan for Le Breton Flats, which was to put more important national institutions there, maybe a new museum like what we have, the War Museum there now, or maybe a new Supreme Court of Canada building. So she said to me, I'm sure you'll build a rink, maybe even a very nice rink, Bruce, but to us it's just a rink. And so, no, you can't have it. You can't have our property. So she turned us down. And so that's why it's in Kanata.
What do you say for?
Thank you.
All right. So Kyle, I want to wish you all the best with your project, and I'm sure it's going to be an excellent project. I'm going to download this video to my computer. I'm going to upload it to YouTube, and I'm going to send your dad the link so you can put it right in your slide deck. Okay?
What do you say?
Thank you.
All right. So I want to say bye and wave goodbye there, Kyle. Wave goodbye so everybody can see it. There you go. All right, perfect.